So in this video, I'd like to take the idea that we spoke about in the last one and then just flesh it out a little bit inside your mind. And I want to talk about the difference between an outcome and an intention. And I also want to explore how these two link together, or how they at least should link together. So an outcome is a specific task, or you could call it an objective, that we would like to achieve in life. Often when we talk about goals, what we are actually talking about are outcomes. They are the detailed descriptions of the tasks that we would like to achieve. And obviously we have our relationship outcomes, we have our work-based ones, we have our personal ones, we perhaps have our health and fitness. We have all kinds of outcomes, tasks and objectives floating about the place. Whereas an intention is where we pan the camera back and we start to look at the greater purposes that these specific outcomes belong to. If you remember from the last video, like I said, everything works in systems. They work in accordance with this Russian doll effect. Now also, my description or my definition of intentions also includes the emotional element that's behind the things that we do. As human beings, we don't do stuff just for the sake of doing it. There's always some kind of emotional payoff behind it. So in my opinion, intentions also have that emotional layer to it too. We can go in different directions with it, but generally there's always some kind of emotional payoff behind the tasks or outcomes that we're attempting to achieve. So just to give you another example, say your specific task, your specific outcome was to stop smoking. That is obviously a highly detailed goal, but just to look at that in isolation, there's not much oomph behind it. There's not really any meaning. But then when you start to explore the intention behind it, the greater purposes and the emotional elements, all of a sudden we start to connect the dots and it starts to have more meaning, and we start to align conscious and unconscious resources. So with stopping smoking, you could maybe explore that a little bit further. And maybe you're doing this because you want to be healthier. You want to be happier, more productive. You want to be able to do things physically. Maybe you want to do sports. Perhaps you want to get fit, but you're struggling to do it because you're so out of breath all the time. This is a greater purpose or a greater intention that's behind that specific outcome of stopping smoking. Or maybe you want to live long enough to spend time with your grandkids. And maybe you want to be healthy enough so that you can play with your grandkids. That's all a greater intention or a greater purpose behind stopping smoking. And even if we explore in a bit more depth the emotional element, you could maybe even ask, well, what would all of that then give you? Well, maybe it would give you a sense of connection because you can spend time with your grandkids. Or maybe feeling healthier will make you feel more confident, or will make you feel more relaxed. It's that weird illusion, by the way, if you are a smoker, people smoke to relax. But when you actually pan the camera back, how much relaxation are you missing out on by being not as healthy as you possibly can be when you do stop smoking? But anyway, that's a completely different subject. Or it's actually the same subject, but it's a slightly different place we're going down there. But just by exploring these emotional elements that are behind the goal, we start to link the goal to something more powerful. We start to link it to the deeper intentions. So just to give you another example of, I guess, where this went slightly wrong. And this is an example from a friend of mine a long time ago. And I just want to pre-frame this story by saying that this was my friend's experience, not mine, because it's not particularly politically correct. So basically what happened was my friend had this very specific outcome, this highly specific goal. He had a task. And this was a relationship task. And his way of describing it, and again, these are his words, not mine, was that he wanted to, quote, score a number 10. Now the thing is, when he gave me his description of his number 10, it didn't include personality traits. It wasn't someone who was caring, giving, fun, that was in sync with them. It was the most ridiculous, superficial description I'd ever heard. It was all looks based. This was a long time ago, and of course we were teenagers. So he then phoned me up and he said, Steve, you won't believe it. I've met my number 10. I was out at a nightclub the other night and I met her. We had a wee chat and I managed to get her phone number. I'm going out on a date with her next week. I'm so excited. I think she's the one because she fits my description of this number 10. She fits my description of this specific outcome. So I said, yeah, sure, sounds great. What could possibly go wrong? Go for it. Let me know how things progress. So a week later, he phoned me up and he said it was just absolutely dreadful. You know, he went out on this date with this girl and there was no connection. There was nothing there. They basically just sat there trying to make conversation. It was incredibly awkward. She looked exactly how he wanted her to look, but there was just no spark. There was nothing there. And he left the date really dejected and a little bit depressed because he thought, hey, I had met the one, or my version of the one. And then he was on a train journey back to his local town and just nonchalantly, his guard was down, he just started speaking to this person who was sitting next to him, this girl. And they hit it off immediately. Now, the thing is, that was 20 years ago and he's now happily married with 3 kids to, of course, this girl. Now, the reason I tell this story is because for him, he had this specific outcome, but it wasn't connected to anything. In fact, to be honest, even if he tried, he probably would have noticed that there were some missing links, that his description was not linked to connection, to sharing an experience with someone who was in sync with him. There was no oomph behind it, no meaning. It's no wonder that he felt like he wasn't getting the things that he wanted, because his description was so different from his intentions. So I think there's 2 reasons behind this story. Is first of all, you want to make sure that your specific outcomes are linked to something that is congruent within you. You want to link it to some kind of honest intention that you do have. But the second one is to really appreciate, to take your outcomes and to deliberately link them to our deeper purposes and intentions, so that everything is aligned from conscious to unconscious. So, how do you do that? That's the question I'm sure you're asking right now. Well, there are a few questions that are worth reflecting when you do your pre-work before you do the self-hypnosis process. And I have 4 of them here. This is more than enough to check that your goals are aligned with your intentions, but also to join the dots between the 2. So the first one is, you've heard me ask this a few times, what greater purpose does this fit into? So you have your specific outcome, you have your task that you want to achieve, you have your goal, and then you simply just ask that question. Just reflect on it. Now the key thing is not to necessarily try to analyse it or try too hard. Just simply reflect on it and see what answers come from within. You might also want to ask the question several times. Sometimes the mind just doesn't quite get it the first time, so if you ask it several times, eventually you'll get the answer, or you'll get one answer. So then we also have this one here, and that's where you state the goal, and then you say, in order to do what? So you could say, okay, stop smoking, in order to do what? Or find that number 10 for you, in order to do what? And that then starts to cast your mind, cast your attention to the goals behind the goals, the greater purposes, and potentially the emotional element behind it. Then we have this one here, which very much zeroes in on this emotional layer behind the things that we do. And that is, what will that give you emotionally? Very simple, but incredibly powerful question. So when you're achieving that goal, what will that give you emotionally? So when you've stopped smoking, what will that give you emotionally? Whew. Well, it'll make me feel happier. It'll make me feel in control of my own health, like I have more influence. It will make me feel more relaxed. So again, by asking this question, you're linking the dots between the outcome and the emotional layer behind it, the emotional payoff. So then the last one here is a really nice question too, and that is, what will that get you or do for you? And again, this is one of these questions that sometimes when you ask it the first time, you kind of go, oh, I have no idea. But then if you ask it a few times, eventually the mind starts to get it. Sometimes we're just simply not used to asking these questions of ourselves. So please stick with it and play about with it over time. So what will that get you or do for you? So you want to have a play about with each of these questions. Now, in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a couple of extra distinctions, and then I'm going to point you towards an exercise. And the exercise in particular is going to be the pre-work for the self-hypnosis process of the inner compass that's about to come. So that's all for just now. Hopefully this idea is really clear inside your mind, and just when you're ready, head over to the next video and we'll discuss the exercise. See you shortly.